There is a place where the mountains fall into the sea, where limestone cliffs plunge into water so blue it looks painted, where medieval villages cling to cliffsides like they're holding on to a dream, and where, for over 2 centuries, the most powerful, the most creative, and the most restless souls on earth have come to find something they couldn't find anywhere else. This is the French Riviera, 70 miles of coastline stretching from the Italian border to the red cliffs of the Estoril, a thin ribbon of land where queens once wintered, where philosophers found enlightenment on mountain trails, and where a single film turned a sleepy fishing village into the most glamorous destination on the planet. But the Côte d'Azur is far more than yachts and sunglasses. Beneath the surface of its famous glamour lies a world that most visitors never see. Roman ruins hidden under medieval streets, a monastery island where monks still make wine by hand, a fortress prison that held a man whose face was never seen, and cliff roads so beautiful that Hollywood came here to chase the perfect car scene. Over the next journey, we're going to travel the entire Riviera, from the timeless streets of Nice to the pastel harbors of Villefranche, from the Eagle's Nest village of Aix to the 2 square kilometers of Monaco, from the red carpet of Cannes to islands frozen in time just offshore, and all the way to Menton, the secret pearl at the very edge of France. This isn't just a tour. This is a story of how one coastline shaped the modern idea of beauty, escape, and the art of living well. And it begins in the city that started it all. Nice has been reinventing itself for over 2,000 years, and somehow it has never lost its soul. Long before the luxury hotels and the blue chairs along the promenade, this was a Greek trading post. Around the 4th century BC, settlers from Marseille founded a colony here and named it Nicaea, after Nike, the goddess of victory. The Romans followed. Then the Italians. Nice didn't become part of France until 1860, and you can still feel every layer. Walk through Vieux Nice, the old town, and the air changes. The streets narrow into a labyrinth of Baroque facades, painted in shades of ochre, terracotta, and faded rose. Laundry hangs between buildings. The scent of soccer, that famous chickpea pancake cooked on wood fire, drifts from corner stalls. This is a neighborhood where people have lived, argued, and cooked for centuries. At the heart of the old town lies the Cours Soleil, one of the most celebrated markets in the south of France. Every morning it fills with flowers, fresh produce, local olives, and lavender soap. On Mondays, the flowers give way to antiques. Locals have been gathering here since the Middle Ages. Travelers who visit report that the Cours Soleil is where you feel the true pulse of Nice, far from the hotel lobbies and designer boutiques. Then there is the Promenade des Anglais, 7 kilometers of seafront stretching along the Baie des Anges. Its story is one of the most charming on the entire coast. In the early 1820s, English aristocrats who had been wintering in Nice wanted a pleasant walkway by the sea. A particularly harsh winter had brought many unemployed workers to the city, so the Reverend Louis Way organized a collection from his English congregation to fund construction of a seaside path, giving local workers paid employment in the process. The walkway was completed in 1824. The locals called it the Chemin des Anglais, the English way. When Nice joined France in 1860, it was officially renamed the Promenade des Anglais. Over time, grand Belle Époque palaces rose along its length. The Negresco, with its pink dome, opened in 1912. The Palais de la Méditerranée, an Art Deco masterpiece, followed in 1929. Today, the promenade's famous blue chairs, first introduced in the late 1940s by a local craftsman named Charles Tordeau, have become icons of the city. Originally white, they were later painted blue to mirror the sky and the sea. And above it all, the Colline du Château, Castle Hill, rises at the eastern edge of the old town. The castle itself was destroyed centuries ago, but the hilltop park remains, offering what many consider the finest panoramic view on the entire Riviera. From here, the curve of the Bay of Angels stretches out like an embrace, red rooftops below, blue infinity ahead. Nice is not a gateway. It is a destination that has absorbed Greek, Roman, Italian, English, and French influences and turned them into something entirely its own. A city that moves at its own rhythm, warm, a little chaotic, and endlessly alive. But now our journey climbs, straight up from the city's wide boulevards into the silence of a medieval eagle's nest suspended between sky and sea. The medieval village of Èze sits on a rocky peak between Nice and Monaco, suspended between earth and sky like a stone crown placed on the mountain's head. From below, it seems impossible. From above, it seems infinite. The village dates back to at least the early Middle Ages, though traces of human settlement here stretch back over 2,000 years. Its streets are barely wider than your shoulders. Stone archways frame glimpses of the Mediterranean. Hundreds of meters below, every corner reveals a new angle, a new shadow, a new sliver of blue. At the summit sits the Jardin Exotique, an exotic garden planted among the ruins of the medieval fortress. Cacti and succulents from around the world grow here, framing what many travelers describe as one of the most stunning panoramic views on the entire Riviera. On a clear day, you can see from Cap Ferrat all the way to the coast of Corsica. But this village is also famous for a path. In December 1883, the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche arrived on the Côte d'Azur. His mental state was fragile. He had broken with the composer Richard Wagner. His books were selling poorly. His health was deteriorating. He came south looking for light. He found it in Èze. For months, Nietzsche walked a steep trail connecting the coastal village of Èze-sur-Mer to the hilltop village above. The climb is relentless, over 400 meters of elevation gain in just 2 kilometers. But the views are staggering. The Mediterranean sparkles below. Pine forests give way to exposed rock. The air smells of wild herbs and salt. It was on this path that Nietzsche found the inspiration to complete the third part of his masterwork, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He later wrote that the landscapes of Nice and Èze had a miraculous effect on him. The trail is now officially called Les Chemins de Nietzsche, and travelers still walk it today, following the footsteps of a philosopher who came looking for healing and left behind one of the most influential works of modern thought. Ez also holds another connection. The village is home to the historic Fragonard perfumery, one of the oldest in the region. The art of perfume runs deep in this part of France, and Ez has been part of that tradition for generations. A village in the sky, a philosopher's trail, and the scent of jasmine carried on the wind. This is Ez. But now the road descends, and what lies ahead is unlike anything else on this coast, because just a few kilometers east, squeezed into barely 2 square kilometers of land, is the most concentrated display of wealth the world has ever seen. Monaco is not France. It is its own sovereign state, the second smallest country in the world, after Vatican City. Just over 2 square kilometers of territory pressed between the mountains and the sea, and yet, within those 2 square kilometers lives one of the most extraordinary stories in European history. It begins with a disguise. On the evening of January 8, 1297, a Genoese nobleman named François Grimaldi approached the fortress on the Rock of Monaco. He was dressed as a Franciscan monk, his weapons hidden beneath his robes. The guards, seeing only a humble friar seeking shelter, opened the gates. Grimaldi and his men seized the fortress in a single night. That act of cunning established the Grimaldi dynasty in Monaco. The family's coat of arms still features 2 monks holding swords, and over 700 years later, the Grimaldis still rule. It is the oldest ruling dynasty in Europe. But ruling a tiny rock was not always glamorous. In 1861, Monaco lost the towns of Menton and Roquebrune, roughly 80% of its territory, to France. The principality was suddenly tiny and nearly bankrupt. Prince Charles III faced a desperate situation. He needed an economic miracle. The miracle came in the form of a casino. In 1863, Charles III partnered with François Blanc, a French entrepreneur who had already made a fortune running the casino in Bad Homburg, Germany. Blanc took over the gambling operation and built it into something extraordinary. He renamed the barren plateau where the casino stood Monte Carlo in the prince's honor. He invested in roads, railways, and luxury hotels. He understood that gambling alone was not enough. You had to build an entire world of prestige around it. By 1869, the casino was generating so much revenue that Monaco abolished personal income tax for its citizens. That policy still stands today. A single casino on a single rock changed the financial destiny of an entire nation. The Monte Carlo casino itself is a masterpiece of Belle Époque architecture, redesigned in the late 1870s by Charles Garnier, the same architect who created the Paris Opera House. Its gilded ceilings, marble columns, and crystal chandeliers remain intact. And here is a detail that still surprises visitors. Citizens of Monaco are forbidden from gambling in the casino. That rule was introduced on moral grounds by Princess Caroline and has never been lifted. Beyond the casino, Monaco holds more layers. The Oceanographic Museum, founded by Prince Albert I in 1910, perches on a cliff face 85 meters above the sea. It was once directed by Jacques Cousteau. The Monaco Grand Prix, first held in 1929, sends Formula One cars screaming through the narrow streets of a city where hairpin turns are bordered by luxury yachts. Monaco is contradiction made real, medieval origins and modern glass towers, a monk's disguise and a billionaire's playground. The smallest country with the largest concentration of wealth per square meter on Earth. But just around the headland, the mood shifts completely, because the next stop is a place so beautiful that it once made painters weep. Villefranche sits in one of the deepest natural harbors on the Mediterranean. Its waterfront is a curve of pastel buildings, pink and yellow and terracotta, reflected perfectly in the still turquoise water below. There are no grand boulevards here, no glass towers, just a medieval fishing port that has barely changed in centuries. The town dates back to the 14th century, when Charles II of Anjou declared it a tax-free port to attract settlers. The name itself means free town. Its old town is a tangle of narrow streets, many of them covered by ancient stone vaults, creating passages so dark and cool they feel like tunnels carved through time. One of Villefranche's most unexpected treasures is the Chapelle Saint-Pierre, a 14th century fisherman's chapel that sat neglected for decades until the French artist Jean Cocteau decorated its interior in 1957. Cocteau covered the walls with murals depicting the life of Saint Peter, the patron saint of fishermen, using a style that blends the sacred with the surreal. It remains one of the most intimate and unusual art experiences on the Riviera. Just around the peninsula from Villefranche lies Cap Ferrat, a narrow strip of land that juts into the Mediterranean like a green finger pointing toward Africa. Real estate experts have documented it as one of the most expensive stretches of land on Earth. The villas hidden behind its high walls and dense gardens belong to royalty, tech billionaires, and the kind of wealth that prefers to remain invisible. But one villa opens its doors to the public. The Villa Euphrosy de Rothschild was built between 1905 and 1912 by Beatrice de Rothschild, a baroness with limitless resources and an obsession with beauty. The villa sits on the narrowest part of the peninsula, with water visible on both sides. Its 9 themed gardens include a French garden, a Japanese garden, a Spanish garden, and a rose garden with over 100 varieties. During construction, Beatrice reportedly required her gardeners to wear berets resembling sailors' hats because she wanted the villa to feel like a ship sailing between 2 seas. Cap Ferrat's coastline is dotted with hidden coves accessible only by narrow trails through the pine forests. Travelers who explore the Sentier du Littoral, the coastal path, report discovering beaches so secluded they feel private. The contrast with the mega yachts visible in nearby harbors is striking. Villefranche and Cap Ferrat together represent something rare on the Riviera: beauty without spectacle, wealth without noise, a coastline that whispers instead of shouts. But the whisper is about to get louder, because the next destination was built by emperors, fought over by pirates, and changed forever by one Spanish painter who arrived with nothing and left behind a museum. The city of Antibes sits on a headland between Nice and Cannes, fortified by massive stone ramparts that have guarded this stretch of coast for over 2,000 years. The Greeks founded it as Antipolis, meaning the city across from, referring to its position facing Nice across the bay. The Romans expanded it. The French kings fortified it, and the sea has battered its walls through every century in between. Today, those ramparts frame one of the most unexpected museums in Europe. In 1946, Pablo Picasso was offered a studio inside the Chateau Grimaldi, a medieval fortress perched above the sea. He was 65 years old, newly in love, and creatively restless. For 6 months, he worked in a frenzy, producing paintings, ceramics, drawings, and sculptures inspired by the Mediterranean light. When he left, he donated the works to the city. The chateau became the Musée Picasso, one of the few places in the world where you can see major works by the artist in the exact setting where they were created. Below the old town lies Port Vauban, the largest yacht harbor in Europe. Over 1,600 berths accommodate vessels ranging from modest sailboats to superyachts longer than football fields. The contrast is almost absurd. Medieval ramparts rising above a forest of carbon fiber masts and satellite domes. South of the old town extends Cap d'Antibes, a peninsula cloaked in pine trees and hidden estates. This is where the myth of summer on the Riviera was born. Before the 1920s, the Côte d'Azur was strictly a winter destination. The wealthy came for the mild winters and left before the heat arrived. Then in the mid-1920s, an American couple named Gerald and Sarah Murphy discovered Cap d'Antibes and decided to stay through summer. They raked the seaweed from a small beach called La Garoupe, invited their friends, and essentially invented the concept of a Riviera summer holiday. Those friends included F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway. Fitzgerald based the setting of Tender is the Night, partly on Cap d'Antibes and the legendary Hôtel du Cap Eden Rock, a clifftop hotel that remains one of the most exclusive in the world. Hemingway wrote about the coast with an intensity that helped cement its place in the American imagination. Antibes holds both the ancient and the modern in perfect tension, Roman walls and superyachts, a castle where Picasso painted and a cape where American writers redefined what summer could mean. And now the coast curves west, toward a city whose name has become synonymous with cinema, celebrity, and red carpets. But the real story of Cannes begins long before the cameras arrived. Most people know Cannes for one thing: the film festival, the red carpet, the flashbulbs. But the story of how this city came to exist is far stranger than any movie. In 1834, a British lord named Henry Brougham was traveling south toward Italy with his sick daughter. But a cholera epidemic had closed the border at the River Var, and a quarantine order prevented anyone from crossing into the county of Nice. Stranded, Brougham took shelter in a small fishing village called Cannes. He never left. Enchanted by the climate, the light, and the Mediterranean landscape, Lord Brougham built a villa and began inviting his wealthy friends to join him. Within decades, Cannes transformed from a settlement of a few hundred souls into a fashionable winter retreat for British aristocrats, Russian nobles, and European royalty. By 1878, the city had nearly 50 hotels. A statue of Lord Brougham still stands across from the Palais de Festivals. Cannes owes its existence to a cholera outbreak and a stranded British lord. The old town of Cannes, called Les Souquets, sits on a hill above the port. Most visitors never climb it. They stay on Les Squazettes, the famous waterfront boulevard lined with luxury hotels and designer boutiques. But Les Souquets is where the soul of the city lives. Its narrow streets predate the glamour by centuries. At its summit, a medieval watchtower offers views across the bay toward the Estoril Mountains, whose red porphyry rock turns crimson at sunset. And then there is the festival. The Cannes Film Festival was born from politics, not art. In 1938, at the Venice Film Festival, Hitler and Mussolini pressured the jury to override its decision and award the top prize jointly to a Nazi propaganda film and an Italian film produced under the supervision of Mussolini's own son. Outraged, the French, British, and American jury members walked out. On his train ride home, a French diplomat named Philippe Erlanger began planning a rival festival, one that would be free from political pressure. Cannes was chosen for its beauty, its hotels, and its Riviera glamour. The first festival was scheduled for September 1st, 1939, but on that exact date, Germany invaded Poland and the world went to war. The festival was cancelled. It would not actually take place until 1946, when it opened as a celebration of cinema and freedom in a Europe still recovering from devastation. Today, the Cannes Film Festival is the most prestigious event of its kind in the world, but beneath the red carpet lies a story of resistance, principle, and the belief that art should never serve propaganda. Cannes holds its secrets well, but its greatest secret may be floating just 15 minutes offshore, on two islands where time itself seems to have stopped. A short boat ride from the glitter of Cannes, the Lérins Islands rise from the Mediterranean like a quiet rebuke to everything the mainland represents. There are two main islands, and each one holds a remarkable story. Île Sainte-Marguerite is the larger of the two, covered in eucalyptus forests and Aleppo pines that fill the air with a green, resinous perfume. Its shores are rocky, its beaches hidden, and its waters so clear that the municipal government has installed underwater snorkeling trails marked with informational signs beneath the surface. But the island's most famous resident never chose to be there. The Fort Royal, a massive stone fortress on the northern shore, once served as a state prison, and its most notorious prisoner was a man whose identity remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of European history. Known only as the Man in the Iron Mask, he was held on Sainte-Marguerite from 1687 to 1698. His face was concealed at all times. Guards were ordered never to speak to him about anything other than his basic needs. No one recorded his name. Historians have debated his identity for over 3 centuries. Voltaire wrote about him. Alexandre Dumas immortalized him in fiction. The cell where he was held can still be visited today. Île Saint-Honoré, the smaller island, holds an even older mystery. A working monastery has stood here since the 5th century. For over 1,500 years, monks have lived, prayed, and worked on this tiny island. Today, a community of Cistercian monks still tends vineyards and lavender fields, producing wine and a lavender-based liqueur called Lérins that is sold in a small shop near the abbey. Walking the island takes less than an hour. The silence is absolute. There are no cars, no hotels, no restaurants beyond the monks' own small establishment. The only sounds are the wind in the pines and the sea against the rocks. The contrast with Cannes, visible just across the water, is almost surreal. On one side, a city built on celebrity and spectacle. On the other, an island where men have chosen silence and solitude for 15 centuries. From monastic silence, the journey turns inland now, up into the hills above the coast, where a cluster of ancient villages became the most important artistic colony France has ever known. Perched on a hilltop 15 kilometers from the coast, Saint-Paul-de-Vence is one of the most visited villages in France. After Mont-Saint-Michel, it draws more visitors than almost any other small settlement in the country, and the reason is art. In the early 20th century, artists began leaving Paris for the south of France. They came for the light, the warmth, and the lower cost of living. And they found in these medieval hill villages landscapes that seemed designed by nature to be painted. Marc Chagall spent the last 20 years of his life in Saint-Paul-de-Vence. He is buried in the village cemetery. Henri Matisse, Auguste Renoir, and Amedeo Modigliani all spent significant time in the surrounding hills. The village became an informal capital of modern art in the south. In 1964, art collectors Aimé and Marguerite Margue opened the Fondation Margue just outside the village walls. It is one of the most important modern art museums in Europe, set in a building designed by the Catalan architect Josep Lluís Sert. The collection includes works by Giacometti, Miró, Chagall, and Braque, displayed in gardens where sculpture and nature blend seamlessly. But the artistic tradition extends beyond St. Paul. The hilltop village of Mouzon, just north of Cannes, was where Picasso spent the last 12 years of his life. He died there in 1973. The village of Bio nearby has been a center for glassblowing since the mid-20th century, and its workshops still produce handmade blown glass using techniques passed down through generations. And then there is Grasse. Sitting in the hills above Cannes, Grasse has been the world capital of perfume since the 18th century. The town's unique microclimate, sheltered from cold winds and bathed in warm Mediterranean air, creates ideal conditions for growing jasmine, roses, and tuberose. The perfume houses of Grasse supplied the ingredients for some of the most iconic fragrances ever created, including Chanel No. 5, whose jasmine was sourced from the fields surrounding the town. In Grasse, master perfumers are called noses. It takes years of training to become one. The town's perfumeries, including the historic houses of Fragonard, Gallimard, and Molinard, offer tours that reveal the astonishing complexity behind what seems like a simple bottle of fragrance. These hill villages represent the inner life of the Riviera. Away from the yachts and the beaches, there is a world of art, craft, and sensory beauty that has been quietly thriving for centuries. The road now leads back to the coast, but not just any road. The next chapter follows the most beautiful drive in Europe, carved into the cliffs between Nice and Monaco, a road that inspired filmmakers, terrified drivers, and claimed the life of a princess. Between Nice and Monaco, 3 roads climb the mountainside at different elevations, each offering a completely different experience of the same stretch of coast. They are called the Corniches, and together they form what many consider the most spectacular drive in Europe. The Basse Corniche, the lowest road, hugs the shoreline, passing through Villefranche-sur-Mer and Beaulieu-sur-Mer. It is the most intimate of the 3, winding past hidden beaches and waterfront restaurants where you can eat with your feet nearly touching the sea. The Moyenne Corniche, the middle road, runs higher, cutting through tunnels and offering sweeping views of the coast. It passes through the village of Ez and provides some of the most photographed vistas on the entire Riviera. The Grand Corniche is the highest. It was built on the route of an ancient Roman road called the Via Julia Augusta, later rebuilt by Napoleon in the early 19th century. To facilitate the movement of troops and supplies along the coast. At some points, the road climbs over 500 meters above the sea. The views are immense. You can see the coastline curving in both directions, from Cap Ferrat to the Italian border. It was on the Grand Corniche that Alfred Hitchcock filmed some of the most memorable driving scenes in To Catch a Thief in 1955. Cary Grant and Grace Kelly raced along these cliffs in a powder blue convertible, the Mediterranean glittering behind them. The film cemented the Riviera's image in the minds of millions. Grace Kelly's connection to these roads runs deeper than cinema. After marrying Prince Rainier III of Monaco in 1956, she became Princess Grace on September 13, 1982. She was driving on a mountain road above Monaco when she suffered a stroke behind the wheel. The car went off the road. She died the following day. She was 52 years old. The tragedy cast a shadow over these cliffs that has never fully lifted. Along the Grand Corniche sits the village of La Turbie, home to the Trophy of the Alps, a massive Roman monument built in 6 BC to celebrate Emperor Augustus's victory over the Alpine tribes. Even in partial ruin, the monument towers over the surrounding landscape. It is a reminder that these roads have been routes of conquest, beauty, and loss for over 2,000 years. The Corniches are not just roads, they are the spine of the Riviera, and they carry within their curves the entire history of this coast. The road now turns west, past Cannes, past the Estoril, toward a fishing village that was unknown to the world until one woman stepped onto its shore and changed everything. Before 1956, Saint-Tropez was a secret, a small fishing port on the western edge of the Riviera, far from the glamour of Nice and Cannes. Its harbour was filled with wooden boats. Its square, the Place d'Elysée, was where old men played pétanque beneath plane trees. Painters had discovered it decades earlier. Paul Signac arrived in 1892 and fell in love with the light. Henri Matisse followed, but to the wider world, Saint-Tropez was invisible. Then came Brigitte Bardot. In 1956, director Roger Vadim filmed And God Created Woman in Saint-Tropez, starring the 21-year-old Bardot. The film caused a scandal across Europe, and overnight, Saint-Tropez became the most famous fishing village on earth. The effect was seismic. Photographers, celebrities, and tourists flooded in. The quiet harbor filled with yachts. Cafes that had served fishermen now served film stars. The transformation was so complete that it is difficult today to imagine what Saint-Tropez was before Bardot. And yet, the old village survives. The Citadel, a 16th-century fortress on the hill above the port, still watches over the town. Inside, a naval museum tells the story of Saint-Tropez's surprisingly fierce maritime history. The town defended itself against Spanish invasion in 1637, an event still celebrated every year in a festival called the Bravade. The Place d'Elysée remains the heart of daily life. On Tuesday and Saturday mornings, it hosts one of the best markets in Provence. Stalls overflow with olives, tapenade, lavender honey, and local rosé wine. And yes, the old men still play pétanque. The Musée de l'Annonciade, housed in a 16th-century chapel near the port, holds one of the finest collections of post-impressionist and modern art on the Riviera, including works by Signac, Bonnard, and Matisse. And then there are the beaches. The Plage de Pampelonne stretches for nearly 5 kilometers south of town. Its white sand and shallow turquoise water have made it one of the most celebrated beaches in Europe. Some sections are lined with exclusive beach clubs. Others remain wild and open. Saint-Tropez is a place of contradictions. Mega yachts and fishing boats share the same harbor. Billionaires and pétanque players share the same square. It is a village that became a legend, and somehow, against all odds, kept its soul. The journey now turns east for the final time, past Monaco, past Aix, to the very edge of France, where the coast meets Italy, and a town full of lemon trees guards the Riviera's last and most underrated secret. Menton is the last town in France before the Italian border, and for many seasoned Riviera travelers, it is the one they love most. The reason begins with climate. Menton sits in a natural amphitheater of mountains that shield it from the cold northern winds. The result is a microclimate so mild that lemon trees grow outdoors year-round. No other town in France can make that claim. The lemons of Menton are famous throughout the country, prized by chefs for their intense fragrance and sweetness. Every February, the town celebrates this citrus heritage with the Fête du Citron, the Lemon Festival. For 2 weeks, enormous sculptures and parade floats made entirely from lemons and oranges fill the gardens. The event draws over 200,000 visitors annually and has been running since 1934. It is one of the most distinctive festivals in Europe. But Menton is far more than lemons. Its old town, the vieille ville, climbs steeply from the waterfront in a cascade of peach, salmon, and gold facades. At its summit stands the Basilica of Saint-Michel, a 17th-century Baroque church whose ornate interior and commanding position make it one of the finest religious buildings on the coast. The square in front of the basilica hosts an annual chamber music festival in summer, with performances held under the stars. Jean Cocteau, the French artist and filmmaker who also decorated the chapel in Villefranche, left his mark on Menton as well. The Jean Cocteau Museum, housed in a 17th-century bastion on the waterfront, contains a significant collection of his drawings, tapestries, and ceramics. A second, larger museum designed by architect Rudy Ricciotti opened in 2011 nearby, expanding the collection. The gardens of Menton are among the finest on the Riviera. The Serre de la Madone, created by the English botanist Lawrence Johnston in the 1920s, is a terraced paradise of rare plants from 5 continents, arranged around pools and stone staircases. The Valrama Botanical Garden, owned by the National Museum of Natural History, specializes in tropical and subtropical species that thrive in Menton's exceptional warmth. There is an Italian quality to Menton that sets it apart from the rest of the Riviera. The architecture, the cuisine, the pace of life. For centuries, this town was part of the Principality of Monaco before it was ceded to France in 1861. That border town identity gives Menton a character that is both French and Italian, and entirely its own. Travelers who make it to Menton often say the same thing. They wish they had come sooner. They wish they had stayed longer. In a world of famous destinations, Menton is proof that the greatest discoveries are sometimes the ones no one told you about. The Mediterranean is vast. Its shores touch 3 continents and more than 20 countries, but somehow it is this narrow stretch, barely 70 miles long, that captured the world's imagination and never let go. Perhaps it was the light, that golden painter's light, that turns ordinary stone into something luminous. Perhaps it was the geography, the way the Alps plunge into warm water, creating a coastline of impossible beauty at every turn. Or perhaps it was simply timing, the right people in the right place at the right moment. English lords who built promenades, philosophers who found clarity on mountain trails, a man dressed as a monk who seized a rock and founded a dynasty, a casino owner who saved a nation with a roulette wheel, filmmakers who defied fascism. a young woman whose beauty transformed a fishing village forever. These are not just stories of the French Riviera. These are stories about what happens when human ambition meets extraordinary landscape, when beauty becomes a force that reshapes economies, redirects history, and changes lives. From the flower markets of Nice to the lemon groves of Menton, from the eagle's nest of Ez to the silent monastery of Saint Honora, from the red carpet of Cannes to the hidden coves of Cap Ferrat, every harbor holds a history, every hilltop holds a secret, every stretch of blue water holds a reflection of the people who stood on its shores and dared to dream. The Côte d'Azur has not finished telling its story. It never will. The light is still golden, the sea is still impossibly blue, and the coast is still waiting.